I don't sleep long these days. A man carries his winters the way a pony carries burrs in its mane. Quiet, but never free. When the stove goes low and the coyotes start their far-off talk, I see snow again, thick as sheep's wool, and the one choice that near broke me. I could have stepped into the dark and not come back, and no one would have blamed me but the Lord. I was younger then, still riding for wages, still trying to prove a man could outstare the world. My coat stank of horse and cold iron. I kept company with miles, coffee gone thin, and the kind of thoughts a man don't share out loud. I told myself I liked the emptiness. Said it was cleaner than people. But if you've lived long under western skies, you know the land listens. It holds what you say against you. One December, a blue norther came rolling down off the high country, mean as a drunk trail boss, and pushed me toward town, whether I cared for it or not. I've been following the rumor of a man who'd stole our pay, Dawson, slick-tongued, trail-hardened, and cruel in the easy ways. I wasn't thinking law. I was thinking balance, steel for steel. Laramie lay half-buried in white that night. Street lamps hummed under their own halos, and every boardwalk rung like a church pew in a storm. I ducked into a saloon long enough to warm my hands and gather fresh talk. Folks said Dawson had been seen, and then said he hadn't, like gossip was a card game, and everyone kept folding. I walked back out with a colder heart than I'd brought in. Rooms were scarce. The boarding houses had folks stacked like cordwood for Christmas, which the town still kept. Carols shook out of parlors, little lights winking in frosted panes, the sort of cheer that makes a loner feel like a stray dog staring through a fence. I'd near given up when I saw a lantern bobbing in the drift, and a woman's voice call through the wind, steady as a bell. "You need a roof, sir. We got one." She stood beside a gate, rubbed smooth by hands. Faith Gallagher, though I didn't know her name yet. A wool scarf, willow green, was tucked at her throat, and snow clung to the brown of her hair like stars that refused to fall. Behind her, another lamp glowed in a kitchen window. Warmth, the old enemy. "I can pay," I told her, rougher than I meant. She smiled small. "You can pay by staying alive. Supper's near. Come on." I stepped across that threshold like a man stepping onto thin ice, slow and watchful, not ready to trust anything that easy. But the wind dropped when the door shut, and a smell of bread rose like prayer. Sometimes the desert ain't sand and stone. Sometimes it's the place inside you where nothing grows, until someone lights a lamp. Faith's place sat at the edge of town, where fences lost their pride, and wind wrote its own scriptures on the eaves. Her mother, Martha, greeted me with a nod that felt like a blessing wrapped in habit. 2 other boarders slept upstairs, miners passing through. But that night, it was just the 3 of us by the stove, sharing stew thick with potatoes, in silence. I hadn't planned on talking. Folks like me, we carry our stories like a busted canteen. Spill a little, lose too much. But Faith, she had a way of asking without words. She poured coffee, leaned her elbows on the table, and said, "Storm will keep you till Christmas, looks like." I just grunted, though the sound of Christmas cut deeper than I expected. Been years since I called any place home long enough to hang meaning on that word. Next morning, I helped Martha bring in wood. The air bit clean, and the sun threw gold across the snow. Faith was humming in the kitchen, something soft about angels and shepherds, and I felt that old ache. the kind that sneaks up when you realize you ain't been gentle in a long, long while. She ran the place with the sort of grace that don't ask to be noticed, fixing curtains, mending gloves, feeding whoever crossed her porch, hungry or lost. Once I caught her laughing with a boy who'd come begging for bread. It weren't flirtation, just kindness. But I remember thinking how long it had been since I'd seen a laugh that pure, unafraid of the world. That night, I found myself by the barn, watching the snow fall through lamplight. She came out, shawl wrapped tight, boots crunching soft. "You're not like the other," she said. "Most men talk big about riding off. You talk small about staying put." I smiled a little. Maybe I just don't talk good anymore. She studied me, eyes the color of winter sky. Or maybe you've been talking to the wrong kind of people. There's a silence that don't demand filling. We stood in it long enough for the world to hush. Then she reached up, tied a piece of tinsel above the barn door, and whispered, your mama says mistletoe's too scarce this year. Guess this'll have to do." Our shoulders brushed. A breath later, the wind sighed between us like the desert itself exhaled. I didn't kiss her, not yet. But the promise of it hung there, trembling like a snowflake that can't decide where to fall. That was the night I stopped hunting. Just a man named Dawson. I started hunting something harder. Peace. 3 days passed, and the storm laid its hand gentle on the land. The roads were buried. Horses stood, steam breathed in the yard, and laughter, real, honest laughter, began to sound like music again. Faith hung pine garlands along the railing, humming that same Christmas hymn. Martha baked till the house smelled like home might have once been mine. I almost believed a man could outlive his ghosts. Then one evening, a ranch hand from town stopped by for coffee. He carried more than cold on his boots. Brought word that Dawson was camped 12 miles south, bragging about the men he'd shorted. My name sat on his tongue like a dare. Something in me woke. Not pride, not courage, just that old fire a man spends years trying to bury. I cleaned my gun by lamplight, slow and steady, like a ritual I'd sworn off. Faith saw it. She didn't say a word till I stood to leave. "You going?" she asked, voice low, no tremble in it. "Just settling what's due." She stepped close, the green scarf looped at her throat, and for a heartbeat, I wished I'd never told her my story. "You think killing him will bring back what he took? It'll stop the ache." "No," she said, "it'll just teach it new tricks." I wanted to argue, but her eyes had that stillness only truth can carry. For a long moment, we stood between firelight and snow, between what I'd been and what I could be. Then she said the thing that cracked me clean open. "If you ride out tonight, I'll pray you make it back, but I won't wait at the door." That hurt more than any bullet could have. I walked into the yard anyway, boots crunching, horse breath fogging in the dark. The wind stung my face like it knew my name. I rode through miles of quiet, each hoofbeat sounding like a question I couldn't answer. By the time I reached Dawson's camp, dawn was bleeding pale over the hills. He was there, hat low, coffee tin in hand, smirking like the devil himself. "Well, if it ain't Keller," he drawled. "Come to square up?" I drew my pistol halfway, then stopped. The cold metal felt heavy with every mile I'd carried it. Somewhere in the distance a church bell rang. Faint, but enough. I holstered the gun. "Sheriff's waiting in town," I said. "He'll settle this." He laughed till it turned to cussing, then spat in the snow. I left him there, riding north, with the sun at my back and Faith's words humming in my chest like gospel. Don't let the past teach you how to die. Let it teach you how to stay. The road north felt longer coming back. Maybe 'cause I'd left something behind. Not just Dawson and his ghost, but the man I'd been riding with all them years. The wind had softened. The world turned glassy white, and I swear I could hear my own heart keeping time with the horse's stride. By the time the town lamps showed, I was near spent. Sheriff Peterson met me at the hitch rail, jaw set tight, but eyes calm. I told him where Dawson was holed up, told him everything that needed saying. He nodded once, like a man grateful for quiet truth. "You did right, Keller," he said. "Feels wrong," I answered. He smiled slow. "Sometimes right does." When I rode back to Faith's, the sky was blushing gold. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the smell of bread hit me like memory. I'd never realized how deep a man could ache for simple things. Warmth, a woman's laughter, the sound of dishes clinking soft. She met me on the porch, arms folded, trying to hide the tremor in her breath. "You back in one piece," she said. "Mostly." "I reckon that'll do." I told her what I'd done, that Dawson would face law, not steal. Her eyes shimmered, half pride, half relief. "That's the kind of peace you don't buy," she whispered. Inside, Martha was humming over a pot of stew, and I swear the house itself seemed to sigh. The Christmas tree stood small in the corner, pine bent from the cold, candlelight winking through its branches. Faith tied a ribbon round the scarf she'd worn that first night and handed it to me. "Mama says every man deserves a gift for coming home." I held that green wool in my hands, thumb brushed over the stitches. "You mean to keep me here?" "I mean," she said, cheeks pinking up, "I ain't got another boarder who can chop wood half as neat." We both laughed, soft, shy, like folks learning how again. The night passed easy, music humming from a fiddle down the street, snow tapping against the glass like it wanted in. Later, when the lamps went low, she walked me to the door. "Merry Christmas, Jack," she said. I looked at her, at that house glowing warm against the wild, and felt something inside settle, like a river finding its bed again. "Reckon it is," I told her. "First one in a long time." Spring came slow to Wyoming that year. Snow melt crept through the gullies. Grass pushed shy through the mud, and the river sounded young again. I stayed on, helping Faith and Martha mend fences, plant beans, fix the roof that winter had near peeled apart. I told myself it was just till summer. But a man knows when he's done riding from something. One morning, Faith set coffee on the porch rail and looked out over the valley, her hair pulled loose by the wind. "Never thought I'd see the day this land looked kind again," she said. "Maybe it always was," I told her. "Maybe we just needed to change the way we looked." She smiled at that, slow, proud, a little sad. Then she said something I still carry. "You can't make peace with the world till you stop fighting yourself." Weeks later, the sheriff rode by with news. Dawson was bound east, sentenced, and silent. He'd handed over what pay he'd stolen, scribbled a note that read only, "Tell Keller he was right to walk away." I didn't feel triumph, just quiet, the kind that lets you breathe again. That night, I sat by the fire while Faith read from a book, her voice low, steady as the heartbeat of the house. Martha hummed near the stove. The wind outside was gentle for once, playing with the curtains instead of fighting 'em. I realized then, maybe heaven don't sit behind the clouds. Maybe it's a warm room, a woman's voice, and the feel of tomorrow still waiting. When spring deepened into summer, I built her a corral, and she planted wildflowers along the fence. We never said much about love. Words got small under skies that wide. But one evening, she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Guess the desert's done testing us." I said, nah. It just taught us how to stand. Now, years later, I still ride out sometimes, follow the old trails till dusk paints the hills in firelight. Then I turn back toward home, seeing the lamp glowing through that window, same as it did the night she opened her door to me. Ugh. Funny thing how a man spends half his life trying to be hard, the other half remembering who made him soft again. And maybe love ain't about holding on. It's about learning to let go gentle.